JoeAdams. Let's see.
Oh, what's this? Is this a misclick? Or is this
No,
like some low
man.
frequency cooked up shit here?
No, this is not a. He knows what he's doing.
So he's doing
He knows
something
what he's
sneaky.
Like, I believe Ace King offsuit mixes that. I think Ace King suited is far too good, and so it probably goes down the pure route. Like, I don't want to talk about too much about my strategy, but just let's say theory. Like, you can definitely have Ace King offsuit flats there, particularly versus, like, I think that's been spoken about, right? Like, when there's like a smaller open in a low rake environment, like, you absolutely do have small blind flats. And then when you do 3-bet, it's actually larger than normal sizing. And then you tend to play more polar post because of your more polar 3-bet pre.
Okay. Is the only way that somebody should look at this is to say either he misclicked or he's targeting Cindy?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's definitely a part of the thing. You should be doing more so versus someone you think is more of a squeezer, yeah.
Is that
I'm not saying
Cindy's
a
reputation, or I don't know anything about his game?
Well, when you do, I guess when JoeAdams does something like this where he flats his hand as strong as that, like the implicit assumption there is that he thinks Cindy will squeeze more. So I'm not saying he is, but I'm saying that there's a very high likelihood that that's what JoeAdams thinks.
Do you think that's more likely than he just misclicked?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, okay. Sick. Cindy deep as well. It's such a weird spot to go for it. So weird.
Well, it's more important about how deep JoeAdams is, but like, yeah, fair enough.
Strange one. If it was aces, it would be also quite an interesting discussion. But yeah, okay. So he's got ace king of clubs, dog shit flop. What kind of
I remember this.
What kind of sizing do you go for on this board?
I think depending on how you construct your range, anything from half pot to 3/4 spot is good.
Okay. So you're not coming out potting here. I guess the small blind flatting range with a lot of pocket pairs is a bit scary on this board.
You absolutely could develop it if you know how to balance it. I personally wouldn't.
If you potted, do you think there's any way he can fold this hand?
No.
Okay, so it's just the nuts, basically. And there's no, like, reason for him to do anything except call, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you want to check raise here with, like, you want to have, like, pair blockers for sure.
What about this turn for some sort of lead? Like, this hand doesn't make sense for it, but as a general strategy, is that a standard play on this top pair repeating card? If so, what sizing would we potentially see?
Well, I have more overpairs than him, so more of his calling range is going to come from like low pockets and 8x and 5x, and so he does have slightly more 8x than me. Like, for sure, you can develop like a donking range here for like a quarter pot. Like, I also will have a lot of 8x, right? Like, I will open all 8x suited, and I'll see bet a lot of those on the flop too, right? So it's not like he has more combos of 8x than me, but it's that like proportionally to his range, they constitute like a larger portion of his range. And so for that reason, he can develop some leads. And he can do it more mergy too, like he can do it with like 5-6, pocket 9s.
Okay.
It's 4.
I guess he won't be doing that with ace king. Oh, he will do it with ace king. That's quite interesting. And then you're going to blast it and he's not going to fold? Yeah, this is a weird spot, I guess. So as Joe, like, would you rather have, let's say, a 5 or a 3? Or would you rather have ace king?
So, well, that kind of really very much depends on what you think imposition constructs their raising range as. So something to note here theory-wise is that, like, as imposition, like, what you would want to bluff very likely here would be the 4th suit, or so like clubs would be like good raises on the turn, or something that will be really good raise on the turn is a suit that blocks the 8x.
The hearts or spades.
Right, like, because you're trying to have like hearts or spades, and then maybe like you could run with that. You probably also want to have like more of these like 10 jack 9 10 jack 10 type high hands, right? Like you wanna raise to where it's like you unblock the 7 9 6 7 suited pocket 6 pocket 7s, and you also want to have like unblockers to the folding range, and you want to have like blockers to the continuing range. And so like if you're Joe Adams' shoes, you are beating all these hands that I might have, like Jack 10, Queen Jack, Queen 10, some 6-7s that I've raised on the turn as a bluff. And so I can definitely see him why he's continuing here, and I don't fault him for it at all.
What's the thinnest you go for value? Like ace 5 frequency or?
No. Thinnest here is pocket nines.
Really? Like 6s or 7s? You don't want to just make some overs that he donks fold? You like
Well,
get value out of a 5 or a 3? Or I guess he can't really have a 3 except ace 3, right? And there's only a few of those.
Like 6s and 7s are like way too thin at this point, right? Because like you kind of want him to have 6s and 7s to call or continue with, right? And so really kind of thin raising 7s here. Like if anything, if you have 7s, right, you got to think where your value comes from, right? And well, when you have 7s, are you really going to get value from the straight draws? Well, probably not, right? Because you kind of blocked them, right? And so then you kind of have to start thinking, well, what if he potentially has hands like floated Queen Jack, Queen 10 suited himself that he like donks turn with, and then rebluffs on the river.
Okay.
Now, when you have 7s, you could think about like having your EV from like bluff catching versus those set hands, right? But you're not really going to get value from like worse, right? Because now Joe Adams has ace king suited there, right? Like you can conceivably have 9s through jacks at a really high frequency. And so like you're kind of like value timing yourself and seeing hard there with raise 7s.
So yeah, this idea, I guess, that I thought might be important probably isn't then that denying his equity when he has those 2 overs that are donking quite often here. It's not really worth that much from the perspective of pocket 7s or maybe even 6s.
Exactly. Well, and here's another thing to think about, right? These donking like 10-9, Queen, Jack 10, Queen 10 suited or King Queen suited, right? When you're holding jacks or 10s or something, or like a higher pocket pair, now you're blocking these types of donks, and more of the donks are going to come from like 6s, 7s, and 6-7. And in that case, you kind of like want to just charge the straight draws, and you want to like raise to get the value from the 7s and the 6s and the 9s.
Okay, cool. So you're going to raise with an unknown hand and get called by ace king. River is an 8, quite an interesting card. There's no way that he can donk here though, right? Because you're repping a bunch of overpairs that have him dead. Plus you both have this kind of trips turning into quads dynamic going on.
Correct.
So he has to just check. And then in terms of sizing, I'll just think about it before I ask you anything. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that the SPR is low enough in No Limit Hold'em that shoving here and leveraging your overpairs over his other pairs, which he has way more often than he has quads, is probably the most important thing. And this whole idea of quads here doesn't really matter too much.
Exactly. Okay. You're exactly right, right? Like in Hold'em, it's complete. I mean, in any, like in Omaha as well, I suppose, but I won't speak because I don't understand it, right? But in Hold'em, right, you always tend to reopen the action, and like it's always like good if you get called by like more than 50% of the hands that you beat than hands that beat you, right? Mm-hmm. So when you value jam here, and the only sizing here is going to be a jam, like let's say you have, like the thinnest you'd go here for the jam would be pocket 10s. And if your opponent occasionally has 8x or pocket jacks, you know, like, well, like that's all she wrote. But he will also station some ace 5, ace 3 suited, pocket 9s, pocket 10s himself if he has it, some pocket 7s. Like 7s wouldn't block any bluffs realistically, but it doesn't block value. And so like 7s is kind of like a meh type of hand. But I would say here is in position, the thinnest you go is 10s. I could be wrong, and it could be that the thinnest you go is jacks, but I'm more inclined to believe that the thinnest here you go is absolutely pocket 10s.
Yeah, if you're saying a hand like pocket 7s is like sort of neutral on whether it calls or not, I have to feel like ace king is better. Or is ace king of clubs specifically bad because of the club dynamic where your turn raise bluffs are going to include some hands that'll either have the ace, the king, or both of these clubs? So
well, here's the thing, right? Like the way ranges are constructed, I am actually really not, like as in position, I don't really see bets for 3/4 sizing holding ace x of clubs or king x of clubs. Like I'd be more likely to see bets for like 10-9 of clubs, where I have better playability across turns and rivers and better blockers to like 10s and 9s. But ace king of clubs specifically, let's say I have ace 10 of clubs or king 9 of clubs or like king jack of clubs, like these hands would be like the first types of hands you're going to find your check back in. And so when Joe has ace king of clubs, he realistically doesn't block any of my bet on the flop, raise on the turn, jam on the river type bluffs, but it does instead block the pocket aces and pocket kings hands.
Right.
So Joe actually has like a pretty sick calling hand, right? Like, where does Joe expect me to find bluffs from here? Like, he expects me to find them from the queen jack, queen 10, 10 jack type of region, right? And so he like pure unblocks that, and then he pure blocks like value. Like, he just like pure blocks value with holding aces, like aces and kings. And so, like, theory-wise, like, this is like I haven't checked the hand through the solver, but like, if I'm in Joe's shoes there and like we're playing theory poker, like this is just like this is just a call, right? Like, I'm not saying you're like super fist pumped about it, right? Like, but this is a call. This is absolutely a call. And maybe you could argue that like having ace king of hearts is slightly better because you block the ace 8 and king 8 of hearts, right? And you block certainly a lot less of my barrels. But I think ace king of clubs is kind of like in the same realm of that, and it's going to be like a very like minuscule difference between whether you want to call ace king of hearts or ace king of clubs. But the hand just has pure blockers to value and pure unblockers to bluff, and so this is where like theory and like real life, right? Like, if you like, I'm here just to talk theory. Like, I'm not going to reveal anything that actually happens in games that I think happens in games at the very least. But when you have ace king of clubs there, and like theory tells you you block value or you unblock bluffs, and your opponent can have, let's say, is perfectly balanced with the both, you just press call. And so I believe he did call, and I think it is a really good call.
I hope after you say all this you have him beat, but it feels like you have to have trash here. Let's see.
I'm balanced with what I say.
Jacks. Nice. Complimenting the man who pays you off for all the money. I could have just guessed with the math, and since you're winning a bunch in the challenge, just assume that you win any pot that you're in. But,
that's a fair assumption. I mean, I've also lost a lot of big pots, man. I've lost a shitload of big pots.
Yeah. Okay. How you doing on time then, mate? You gotta go.
Oh, I actually gotta shoot off like immediately.
Yeah, go.
But it was nice. It was nice being on stream, man. Thanks.
Yeah, bro. No worries. Maybe we do some sort of a podcasty type of thing with some of the final like top 5 runners for winning the event. I don't think Linus will show up, but maybe Kevin comes. Me, you, Prodigy, etc.
Kevin would be sick, man.
Yeah, Kevin would be fun.
And I know Lama is not a top 5 guy in the leaderboard, but man, like having Lama on the stream is just incredible, bro.